So first of all, I just want to take you through some key observations. First of those is that I think at the moment we're locked into a vicious cycle in this catchment. We've got state and bank-sponsored intensification on a scale that we've never seen before. And what we're seeing out there is things such as drying rivers and lowering aquifers. We're seeing too many nutrients and pollutants. We're seeing the water quality effects that go with those. And we're also finding that public money is being needed, and significant amounts of public money, to clean up the mess. And unfortunately, this current cycle is fueling that intensification growth. And as I said, I think that's causing us a number of issues. On a more positive note, I think it's important we do recognise the improvements that are underway. And there are a number of changes being made by farmers in this catchment. We've got things like good management practices being implemented. We've got farm environment plans, and there's big lists of things for the farmers to do there. You can see we've also got things like groundwater transfers, special iwi and nutrient management zones. So there are some great success stories, and I think it's important that we do acknowledge those farmers that have led the charge and have really made some great gains. I think it's really important we do that. But we also have to sort of think and ask ourselves, can we do better and can we aim higher? And I personally think we can. So I just want to take you through a couple of key points that I'd like you to think about while you're hearing from our other speakers tonight. The first of those is really around, as I said, taking a whole of community approach to these problems. And the first one here is around adapting to longer term groundwater levels and environmental trends. And by that I mean really managing our catchment based on what we can measure and managing those limits to growth around measurement rather than what we can model, because there's so many things associated with modelling that can get us into trouble. Now, I just want to give you an example of that, and I appreciate that you won't be able to see a lot of detail in this graph, but I'll try and sort of quickly go over it. What this graph is showing is a representation of groundwater levels in the Hinds catchment. Now, I wasn't able to find this exact data for the SWWIM, but from the evidence I've seen, the relationship is very similar in this catchment to what we're seeing in the Hinds. So to sort of sum this graph up, what it's showing is we've got from 1973 through to 2016, we've got those groundwater levels, and we've got that occurring through both the wetter periods and the drier drought periods. So what it's showing is that these groundwater levels are varying up and down, but that variation is occurring over several years. And the main thing to get out of this graph is that, and it's a bit hard to see on the slide, but there's actually a trend line coming up through here, up to 1996, and then we have a significant decline coming down through here to 2016. So effectively what that's showing is that we need to be managing groundwater levels on much more of a longer term basis. Over 4 or 5 years we need to be looking ahead and saying, what's the trend line? And when you do see that decline like that, and particularly in the last few years, we've had that drought period, we really need to start saying, how can we manage to that obvious trend line? Things like CPW water transferring from groundwater to surface water will help, but I don't think it's enough, and we need to be looking closely at what the environment's telling us. The second key point I want to just touch on is around diversifying our farming methods. Alison Jews is going to talk about this in much more detail, but it is about looking at what we're doing currently and looking for lower intensity farming models, finding ways to lower the number of cows per hectare that we're farming and doing that in a profitable way. It's also about looking at things like mixed cropping and moving away from that sort of, I guess, our obsession with the sort of dairy model that we're seeing at the moment. A big part of this as well is to sponsor farmers that are willing to get out there and try new methods. And I think it's really important that we put some of the government funding and some of the regional funding into helping farmers to make these changes and prove that it can work, and then others can follow. So the final area I want to talk about is the community internalising the environmental costs of agriculture and any other land use activity that's affecting our water quality. I think we need to pay more for our products and reward best practice if that's going to encourage and incentivise. We also need to levy and charge those land users who are slow to adopt these changes. We can rely on regulation to a certain extent, but we need to come through and do that. The third thing there, as I mentioned before, this vicious cycle, we need to try and break that cycle and really look at the benefits of ecological agriculture. We do think there are better ways, and as I said, I'm looking forward to hearing from these other speakers tonight. They're going to set the scene for what's in our region, and then they're going to talk about some solutions. Thank you. So I'll just introduce Russell Death as the next speaker.